Hi, this is Bill Bice, and I'm here today with Jeff Brandt. Jeff, welcome.
Thank you very much, Bill. Appreciate it.
It's great to be with you. We've known each other for a long time, but I don't really know how you got into legal technology. So give us a little background. How did this happen?
So my first job out of college was in complex litigation support. They didn't even call it e-discovery at that point. I applied to a job, Rust Consulting, and good friends that you also know, Kurt Meltzer, actually hired me at my first job. And I did everything there. I wrote programs, I did database work. Rust Consulting at the time had the distinction of having one of the largest PC-based litigation cases in the world at that point. I mean, we're talking IBM PCs, tall grass, Priam, disk towers. I'm really dating myself here. Yeah, I mean, I did programming on Wang VS mini computers. I did stairs on mainframes, you name it, and I did it. So that was my introduction. I got into the world of complex litigation support. The first lawyers I ever really met and dealt with were Texas litigators. We had a oil case in the Panhandle, Texas, Oklahoma area. And I learned all kinds of colorful new vocabulary that was not necessarily legal specific, but that was my start.
Yeah, what an introduction to start with Texas lawyers. So we get to blame it all on Kurt. It's his fault.
You can blame it all on Kurt. Yes, Kurt hired me, so we can blame it all on him.
And when were you going to college? Was this part of the plan, or did it just happen?
Well, actually, I wanted to go to school originally for architecture. My uncle was an architect, and my father did a lot of work in his line, worked for Bell Telephone. Was an outside plant engineer. And both of them ultimately talked me out of becoming an architect. So I went with my second love, which we had just gotten in high school a year and a half, I think, before. So I think the tail end of my junior year and then my senior year in high school, they cleaned out a closet, literally a supply closet, and put 2 or 3 Apple IIs, computers in there. And I love that. So my degree is computer science mathematics. No idea what litigation support was or anything else at that point. And so I have then spent the last, 36 years working in the legal market.
Yeah, and don't worry, we're all dating ourselves in this podcast. It's part of the point of it, so that's okay. I mean, there is a history repeating itself component to this, because the challenges that we faced in the 80s and 90s, like, we just have different versions of them today.
Yeah, everything does seem to come around at some point. Everything that's old is new again.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, there's still an architecture component of what you do. It's just the network architecture and the.
Yeah, it's very different in that respect. I mean, I literally love the drawing part of it, and arguably, as I have matured and my roles have taken on more senior status, really it becomes even less about the technology and more about the vision, the plan, the adoption, the strategies of how we get from point A to point B, because quite frankly, there's a lot of good technology out there. It doesn't have to be, a certain technology in order to be successful, but your communication plan, your strategy for how you're going to get there becomes a very critical component in that path.
Yeah, absolutely. So what drew you into, because I mean, you're not just the doing legal technology in a firm. You've been involved in the legal tech from the industry standpoint, and in conferences, and your writing, and all the work that you have done. What caused you to sort of expand that horizon, as opposed to just being heads down and doing your job?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, I think, again, I started very technical. I was writing programs. I was doing system administration. My very first job at Porter Wright, I would actually go into the computer room and IPL the Wang VSs when we had issues. But I think I will credit it to Hildebrandt. Now, Brad Hildebrandt was a guy that people either love or hate. I really liked Brad, but the experience I had at Hildebrandt, I worked with what I consider to be, even today, the top people in their fields. Uh, Library, space management, finance, all these different areas that impact a law firm, because Hildebrandt did all of that at the time. And so it exposed me to a wide variety of things, get down and think about, okay, well, what is a marketing director looking for? What's the goal of the technology? What ultimately are the wins? How do we declare success for this particular project from a marketing perspective? And so I've always been kind of a what if person. You go through the different scenarios in your head. Well, what if this and what if that? And so I built up myself like an RSS feed. And I would read, what are the trends in legal? What are the trends in technology in general? I've been a member of ILTA in all the different various iterations, I think 30, 31, 32, 33 years, something like that. And I had some incredible mentors in that process. I didn't know lawyers well. I didn't know the politics of a law firm. Didn't really even know when I first started, I hate to admit that, but this is true, even what the business of law really was about. And so I had great people helping me through some of those pieces. I had my readings, which really helped. And then again, we'll come back to Kurt. Kurt is a fixture in my life. Kurt was doing the PinHawk Legal Technology Daily Digest. And I think at the time he went back in-house to be at work, I think. And he said, well, you already do this. You do the reading, you analyze, you're trying to pick up on the trends. So why don't you take over and do the PinHawk? So that was 10 years ago. I took that over in 2011. And that has just been a joy in general. I love doing that. I love the feedback from the readers. And I love looking forward and, looking through, what are the trends? What are the things that are happening? What are the things that I want to pass on to my peers inside my firm? What are the things that I need to make sure that my IT group knows in particular? So, I will surprise people from time to time. Well, where did you get that information? And oh, we didn't know that was happening until later. And you seem to be ahead of that. I see 500 plus feeds of information, both legal and non-legal sources, as part of the PinHawk work. And actually, when I joined Jackson Kelly, that was one of the things that they really liked. They said wanted me to continue to do it. So, my morning starts rather early as part of that. But I find the analysis for, the trends and what's happening, even talking to my peers, why they're doing something different than I'm doing it. One of my goals for the past, 5 years here, a little more than 5 years here, has been to get IT out of the plumbing. Yeah, we want to be in the business and the practice of law. Yes, there are certain things that we have to do plumbing wise, right? Whatever analogy you want to use. The toilets have to flush, the drains have to run on time. All those things have to happen from a plumbing perspective, but it really doesn't add value. The fact that I upgrade from this version of NetDocs to that version, or Office to this, or Windows or whatever, is not really the value add proposition. It's when I can get around those things and start pushing solutions or training or anything else, so that the tools are being used at a higher percentage, or literally to the point where I am impacting the business and the practice of law. And that takes a lot of understanding of the business of law, the culture of the firm, the tolerance of the lawyers in our case, we don't have partners, we've got members, but the members of the firm, the executive committee, what risks they're willing to take, which ones they're not. And I've been very fortunate here. I've got an incredible staff, number one. Number two, I have a firm that is of a size that's nimble. I've been a part of larger firms, and that's a bigger boat and it's harder to turn. But Jackson Kelly is of a nice size, and they're willing to be persuaded to make changes. So we've got pretty much nothing of value left on-prem anymore. We're completely cloud solution in Azure. Last thing we uplifted was Adirant into the cloud, and made us look really smart from a architecture point of view when COVID came along. Had we had to do what our old on-prem systems with Citrix and everything else, buying the hardware, getting the hardware shipped to you, installing it, and so on. And instead, it was a 15-minute operation for my senior Azure engineer to say, okay, here we want this a little bit bigger, clone this, bingo bango, we've got 100% remote access at this point.
Right. You were
So
in
all
the perfect place to deal with that
it
crisis.
worked out. It worked out well from that perspective. So again, one of the, if there is a potential silver lining to the pandemic, we were fairly well prepared for it.
I think there's a number of silver linings, actually. Sometimes in legal, we need this sort of outside pressure to cause change to occur. And what you're really talking about is making IT, making technology strategic for a firm. That it's that switch in mindset. That's how you get a real return on the investment. What do you think the impact of what's just happened with the pandemic, that overnight shift that you had to do, and that that every firm had to do, whether they were ready for it or not? How do you think that's changed the partners and administration view of legal tech now?
I think probably the biggest change is, and I'll overgeneralize, at the more senior levels, people that were maybe a little afraid of the technology, a little concerned about how to work it, or will I break it, really got proven that it's not that big a deal. You can handle it. You can do more. I mean, you look at the kinds of calls we got when we first pushed everybody back home, or everybody fled, however you want to describe that. And it was simple stuff. How do I do X? How do I do Y? There's no crutch for a secretary. There's no crutch for a paralegal. Everybody's got to be able to do what it is they want to accomplish from home. And I think people realized that it wasn't as big, wasn't as bad, it wasn't as scary as they thought. So I think the biggest thing that I've seen in talking to colleagues, not just here at Jackson Kelly, is that kind of more open mindset. Oh, well, okay, we did this. I can accomplish this. So I can see how going forward that we could probably do this. We could ratchet it up a little bit. I mean, because that's truly what we saw was a curve of, again, overgeneralized, the more senior folks that, how do I do X and Y? And then it was, well, geez, I can do A, B, C. And then, by the time you get a month or a month and a half into this, people are going through the whole alphabet. How do I do A through Z? And we had people that were looking at their offices. They haven't been back in their office for months, 3.5 months, saying, okay, every piece of paper on my desk I don't need at this point. Again, we early on when we adopted NetDocs, and that was kind of the primary first piece of our push into the cloud. That was actually done by Skip, my predecessor. That is our client record of choice, right? That's our client file. We try and get rid of, again, I don't believe in paperless society. Maybe my grandkids will see it, I don't know. But I do believe in less paper society. And so we've been able to do quite a bit of that. And again, people that had come with us on that journey had put more into NetDocs, then operated better, more efficiently without any issues or concerns going forward. What they had in their office, what they had on their desk, what was in the filing cabinets, really became I don't want to say inconsequential, but copies of it were there digitally, and so you're able to operate from anywhere.
I think the great benefit of this mind shift, we're going to see this for years to come, because we've just had 18 months where we've proven that we can do it and that you can work from anywhere. And I don't know if you saw the data from Thomson Reuters. It's essentially a profitability index.
I did see that, yeah.
Yeah, and so it would be one thing if the numbers were negative, but it's the biggest gain that we've seen in legal and in many years, and
Well,
that
and that's
happened in the pandemic.
well, and that gets back into your earlier comment about sometimes we need external pushes. I mean, the bubble that surrounds legal is, I don't know if intense is the right word. It's thick. It's a thick bubble. Lawyers selling to lawyers, which is the majority of the model. You now have people in purchasing and acquisition. You've got business line leaders and so on that are now buying. So it's not always so much lawyer to lawyer anymore. And in fact, I remember, geez, my last law firm, the very first call the attorneys had, we put out a proposal to do some work. We won the work. There were some heavy technology components as part of that. And the attorneys got on the call, and it was basically the purchasing department. So I kind of imagine that these people had a conversation with the coffee distributors before us, and we're going to deal with truck tires after us. And it was a very eye-opening experience for the lawyers because they weren't talking to one of their own. But that aside, I mean, again, the ability to adapt and shift, the ability for us to be able to move forward in a digital fashion. I think you're right. I think there will be, whether or not work from home becomes a routine and institutionalized thing. I don't know. There are some law firm cultures. I mean, you talk about law firms and the culture. Every culture is different. It's a massive spectrum out there. And I don't know in my own mind how some firms will operate with the idea if you're back in the office and you have an associate that's two doors down and one that's only available via Zoom or Teams or something like that, are those individuals going to be treated culturally the same? Is the progression, the path for them going forward truly going to be equal? I don't know the answer. In some cultures, I'm sure the answer is yes. In other cultures, I'm quite sure the answer is no.
And I think we're going to see some divide there. So in really large firms with lots of offices in large metros, there's a lot more pressure around supporting hybrid work. And so I think it's going to be very different depending on the firm size. And I think we're going to see some firms that lean into returning to the office and really make that their culture, and others that tackle those kinds of issues of how do you mentor and support the advancement of associates when not everybody's in the office at the same time all the time. And it takes a different approach.
It does. And I think, again, that openness, the pandemic kind of pried open the idea that, okay, we don't have to do things, we can still be successful, we can still do things slightly differently, we can move forward. It does not necessarily have to be the way we've always done it, which is actually a phrase I've always hated in my life. But we can move forward, we can make changes, we can be successful with a different model.
I mean, we went out and talked to our team, and we chose to purposely stay remote. We still have two offices, well, three really. One in Phoenix, one in London, but they're much smaller now. And nobody goes into the office every single day. And the majority of people work from home the majority of the time, which is what they wanted to do. And so we're leaning into that. It's given us a big advantage from a recruiting standpoint, because there's just a huge portion of the talent that's what they want.
It will be interesting to see, because you had all these studies. Well, let me rephrase that. You have all these studies really starting, and the data now just being analyzed as to, what really happened. How productive were we 18 months, into the pandemic. And I think there's a huge need and want for work from home. There's, I think, a contingency that wants to come back into the office and have things return to normal. And there's folks that want to be able to switch back and forth as they need between the two. And I think, quite frankly, it comes down to a function of your role and what the bigger role, the team piece is doing. There are absolutely things that I can do more productive from home, from my home office. And there are things that absolutely are much better done in an in-person meeting. I'm still a bit, whether it's I'm old school and too many gray hairs or what exactly, I still feel that there are some things that work better in a face-to-face meeting. There's certain kinds of collaboration. My office is outside, or just outside my office is our network support group, help desk, and so on. And the conversations that go back and forth over the top of the cubes is really what builds that team and the cooperation between those teams. And as much as we moved to Teams, Microsoft Teams, and did audio, did video, we moved probably 90% of our email traffic into Teams as part of all this. It doesn't give you that benefit. You can't be listening over the top, to somebody else's phone conversation with a user and be able to say, hey, this is going on. And, so you have a little bit more of a delay as that gets communicated in writing in some way, in a chat or, something like that. But I think that, there's functions, and that probably is the biggest thing to me. I don't know that I could define, I think of all the articles I've read, I think one firm quoted 70 or 80% of their space they were going to give up. And I don't know how you could know that right now. I see giving up space because I see a certain percentage of people working from home. But I'm still trying to gather information on what our clients are going to be doing. How are they going to approach this change? I've talked to a lot of our senior practice leads and marketing department, and it's like, okay, guys, this is where we think we're headed. But I'm got a background as a Boy Scout. My son's an Eagle Scout. I'm still involved with Scouts, and I knew I want to be prepared, right? I'm already working on what do I need to do if the Delta variant gets bad enough and pushes this all back home again. I hope that doesn't happen. Cross fingers and certainly hope that we don't see a return of that. But if we do, how can I even be more prepared than I was the first time we went out? But I think there's a lot to that. I think there's a lot of how you define those interactions. Some roles work really well remote. Other roles don't work quite as well. Some you can supplement with technology. Some you can supplement with new workflows. But I think it's going to be a balance. And I wouldn't argue that after 18 months or so in the pandemic that I've got down pat what my full-on answer is for how I see us proceeding forward as we go through Delta and then hopefully return to whatever our new normal is.
Yeah, but it's going to be a new normal, and it's not necessarily
Absolutely.
entirely clear what that is. Not everybody's got it all figured out, but that assumption that everybody's going to be in the office all the time for a huge majority of firms isn't going to be true anymore at some level, wherever you fit on the spectrum.
Yeah, but then how do you deal with and of course it leaves my mind right now, who was a general counsel or chief legal officer that basically said to their outside counsel that he wanted them all in the office?
Right.
And it's like,
The investment
no.
bank memo. Yep.
Yes, yeah. It's like, okay, really, is that your place to dictate how the firms get the business done? I mean, I get it. You want efficiencies, you want all these different things, but That's kind of like telling me I have to use a certain accounting package, or I have to use this particular tool in order to, no, really, I don't. I have to provide you superior service and timely service. But I don't know that I like the idea and concept of clients dictating that level of, I mean, we'll do lots of things for clients. Absolutely. Don't get me wrong. But telling us how to operate, what our procedures and so on should be, I don't know that I buy into that. And I think so far he's really the only one that came out and said that. But like I said, who knows what clients I think are in the same position we are. They're still feeling out what do they need to do to keep their operations going? What do they need to do to incentivize employees, bring on new people, onboarding people? How do we, what is that new normal look like? And I can't define my new normal until I know what my client's new normal is. So
Right.
we're going to travel that path together, I think, for a couple of months yet.
Yeah, and that memo was really pre the full Delta surge, and so it already looks different just
Yep.
a few weeks later.
Yep. Very true.
And so it's hard to pin everything down and say, well, this is the way it's going to be, because we don't know. We've got to work it out together. I think flexibility, though, and the need to be able to deal with that change, that kind of is the new normal.
I think, I mean, we, even before the pandemic, so 2020, we were already looking at pushing deeper into the tools we already have. Do we really need more software, or is it a function of can we make what we have do more for us? So we've been pushing that direction and are continuing to do so through, excuse me, through 2021 as well. And I think, ultimately that's what a client wants, right? They want you to be able to be as efficient as possible, as direct and speedy as possible, in order to resolve whatever the legal business pain points that they have are. And that's how we do that. Technology, workflows, interactions, the research, all those things come together in ultimately providing the advice and counsel that we give.
I think the appreciation that the increase in appreciation that we've seen for legal technology because of what's happened in the pandemic, I think that's going to pay off for law firms for many years to come. And that exposure that you were talking about of more senior personnel in the firm getting their hands on it, that's going to make a real difference in decision making down the road.
I think the biggest thing that's going to change is the adoption piece. I don't think, well, some firms, I guess, will probably buy more technology, but we already have firms that buy tons of technology. And, I don't know who coined the term shelfware, but, a lot of firms buy a lot of software and it sits on the shelf unused. I think the pandemic opened up, okay, we have this tool, it can do X, I can use it, so I will adopt and use it. I can integrate it better into my practice, into what I need to do to deliver to my clients. So I don't think we have purchased more technology as a result of the pandemic, but I will say absolutely we're using the technology we have a lot better.
Well, and I think that word integration is so key, because shelfware is so often the pieces that didn't integrate well, that live in their own little silo. You have a lot higher chance of success if it
Yes, I
ties
think so.
to the core pieces in the firm.
I mean, you've always had the issue of, what's in it for me? What is the ultimate payback that I get as part of that? But you still have issues, when you look at hourly billing, right? So, if I'm disincentivized to automate, and if I can reduce the time to produce a document from 3 hours to half an hour, but the mindset is I just lost 2.5 hours of billable time, that doesn't get you anywhere. So I think there's still work that needs to be done there, but I do believe that you're absolutely right. We will be benefiting from that crack in the armor that says this is doable. And therefore, once you're saying that this is doable, then this other thing is also doable, and this is doable, and you can build on that going forward.
Well, one thing that we're seeing is a further reduction in the attorney staff ratio. Just look at the firm numbers as a whole.
Sure.
And I think what you've talked about of attorneys using the technology directly is contributing to that, because they're seeing that does work. You really don't get to pass through the costs of staff. And so because we're still driven by the billable hour, there's kind of a natural end result that comes out of that.
Yeah, I mean, but you can't run afoul of the idea, though, that some things should be pushed to other layers, right? So you want to push something down as far as it could go and still be done well and properly. So it's not necessarily because I can now do it, I should do it. And I think that's somewhat of a risk. But again, I think the positives are well outweighing any of the negatives.
Yep, absolutely. Well, Jeff, this has been a lot of fun having this conversation with you. I appreciate you coming on, and it's we got a lot more work still left to do.
We do. It doesn't end.
Absolutely. Thanks.
Take care.